Hi everyone, my name is Olivia Inwood, and today I'll be presenting on a systemic functional linguistic analysis of a publicly released Twitter troll dataset in the era of ChatGPT. But firstly, to provide some introduction, my background is in linguistics and media and communication studies. I'm interested in language and social context and technologies, broadly like social media data and generative AI. My PhD was conferred in May this year, and I was using systemic functional linguistic theories to investigate how online communities spread and counter information disorders on social media, in particular using YouTube data. And then post-PhD, I worked with a team of computer scientists to study political propaganda on Twitter. So combining my qualitative methodology from my PhD with GPT 3.5. And that's kind of the inspiration behind this presentation today. So just a little bit more on my research background. I have a particular interest in the interpersonal dimension of information disorders. So that is social bonding as a way to enhance perceived credibility. And my PhD explored how understanding social bonding is the first step in developing methods to renovate and overcome negative discourses, since studies have shown they cannot be overcome through logical argument alone. And we can linguistically investigate social bonding via evaluative language. So, for example, language that conveys judgments, opinions, or assessments about a particular subject, idea, or situation. So, as I'm sure we all know, evaluation is more than just adjectives. It's a broad term encompassing different studies of evaluative meaning as affect, subjectivity, point of view, evidentiality, attitudinal stance, appraisal, sentiment. Both automated and manual analyses are possible, but at different levels of details and contextual awareness that I'll be exploring in this presentation. And who is evaluative language of particular interest to? So it's of interest to people working in disciplines such as marketing, computer science, communication studies, psychology, and of course, linguistics, in terms of how we express ourselves and how we can classify linguistic expressions according to the type of opinion they convey. And I also just briefly wanted to cover sentiment analysis. So sentiment analysis, also referred to as opinion analysis or opinion mining, refers to a broad field of study that analyzes people's opinions, attitudes, and emotions. And it's a typically automated analysis, particularly in natural language processing, that is of interest to me as well, and is focused on positive versus negative sentiments. So sentiment analysis has automated emotive features of language in terms of affect, but has not considered other evaluative meanings, such as the judgment of someone or appreciation of an object. On this slide, I just have, an example of sentiment analysis conducted within, again, more computational studies. And often in sentiment analysis, this sort of heat map cluster is quite common. So now that leads me to appraisal. So appraisal systematizes evaluative meaning at the level of discourse semantics. So in terms of attitude, feelings, and evaluation of things, engagement, understanding how opinions are placed in discourse, and graduation, the grading of feelings. And this system also considers polarity and similarity to sentiment analysis, positive versus negative evaluations. And meanings within the attitude subsystem are also specified as either explicit meanings that are clearly evident in the evaluation of the text that's inscribed attitude, or implicit meanings that require further context in order to understand, which is invoked attitude. So here's an example of the appraisal system network that explores evaluative meanings. So we have these three main subsystems of affect, feelings and reactions to behavior, judgment, ethically assessing the person or behavior, and appreciation, valuing an object or phenomenon. And of course, we can go into further delicacies as well within affect, happiness, security, satisfaction, inclination, within judgment, social esteem, social sanction, normality, capacity, tenacity, veracity, propriety, and then appreciation, reaction, composition, and valuation. And in this presentation, I'll be discussing at what levels appraisal has been successfully automated, and at what levels automation is struggling because of the kind of level of detail and contextual awareness needed. So in my own research, I'm also interested in persona analysis. So I see that as an application of studying evaluative language, sentiments, and appraisals, the creation of persona categories. By persona, I mean a social mask or identity assumed in a particular social context. So, for example, an individual can represent many different personas, and an entire group of people can represent a particular persona. So persona research applications include categorizing the different linguistically enacted identities that emerge in social media comment threads. So, for example, the key targets of evaluation and how they are evaluated. And I have one paper with Michelle Zapovinia where we explored the personae evident in YouTube comment threads of videos about conspiracy theories. And here's just a visual representation of our findings. So, for example, an anti-media persona would bond around these evaluations of the video being trustworthy, the mainstream media being evil, or the media lying, or this was in relation to the Notre Dame fire conspiracy theory, believing that the fire was deliberate. So now, in relation to systemic functional linguistics and natural language processing, how can SFL and NLP work together in social media data analysis? So firstly, a manual analysis could be conducted and then fed into the large language models. And then it's automated via discovery of key language patterns by the large language model. So that's a very much a kind of just input, output sort of model. But then there's also this human in the loop model. So that's the process of human input. So again, that could be the manual analysis. And then some AI model training happens. And then though there is still a human output. So the human would check the process, and then it would be continuously looped. So in this instance, the human is still very much there and continuously correcting the AI model. And when I was working with computer scientists at RMIT, I was part of this human in the loop process. So the example I want to give, first example I want to give from my kind of work with computer scientists and natural language processing was this Twitter troll data set that we were exploring. So in 2018, Twitter released an archive of over 10 million tweets from state-sponsored troll accounts, encompassing tweets from agencies such as the GRU, the Russian Military Intelligence, and IRA, the Internet Research Agency based in Russia. And this data set has already been widely used in many computational social science studies in order to understand Russian troll strategies and develop detection methods to combat this dangerous discourse. And examples in this presentation mainly draw upon this data set. So firstly, I just wanted to talk about some research that was already conducted using this data set. In particular, this really interesting paper called Cross-Platform State Propaganda, Russian Trolls on Twitter and YouTube during the 2016 US presidential election. This paper is really interesting in how it discusses the role of hyperlinks. So a substantial amount of data in that 2018 Twitter troll data set contained hyperlinks and retweets. And links were promoted on both sides of the ideological spectrum. So the conservative ones, so for example, links to Fox News, and liberal, for example, links to New York Times. And in particular, YouTube links were the second most linked destination among IRA tweets. So again, when I started looking at this data set, I was also looking at the literature that was already published and the sorts of methodologies that had already been implemented and the focus as well. So it was very interesting insight to read about the role of hyperlinks in this data set. So I was coming at this data set from my kind of persona analysis work I'd previously conducted in my PhD. So again, that was the development of persona categories to characterize common linguistically enacted identities realized via patterns of evaluative language. And so after this process of manual annotation, there was the identification of key linguistic patterns that I'd explored in my PhD, but now I was interested in that next step, whether this could be automated. But of course, we were also taking this human in the loop approach. So checking the validity of generative AI outputs. And yeah, on this slide here, I just have an example of the manual analysis I conducted on a data set of Momo challenge comments. So again, just to give an idea of the manual side of this personae analysis, where I identified key linguistic patterns in terms of affiliation strategies, and of course appraisal as well, positive attitude, negative judgment, those sort of patterns. So when I was working with computer scientists at RMIT, I was really interested if this sort of analysis could be automated. And when I was exploring the Twitter troll dataset as well, I also initially tried to apply the macro category analysis I'd conducted during my PhD research as well. So again, where I was looking for evidence of these sort of personae around like skepticism, so questioning the veracity of a YouTube video, criticism, criticizing the veracity of a video or individual, education or expertise, nationalism, so emphasizing the importance of a geographic location, hate speech, negative judgment towards a person or group of people, encouraging hate, and then storytelling and conspiracy, so spreading false information in a narrative format. But of course, this is not an exhaustive list of macro categories or personae. So of course, I also went into the data as well and tried to discover, new personae categories, new patterns in the language. So this is an example of personae in Xinjiang tweets. So the types of personae I was discovering were like the anti-West, pro-China personae, so they would have a negative ideational target of the West and a positive ideational target of China. There were like promotional pro-China personae, so these tweets would usually follow a pattern of a newspaper headline and brief comment, plus some sort of hyperlink and a positive evaluation of Xinjiang and China, and then reportage. So it would also follow this pattern of a newspaper headline plus hyperlink and some absence of evaluative meaning without further context. So this, again, was following similar categorizations I'd made in previous case studies, but of course the ideational targets are always different. And then some example personae and GRU tweets, so anti-political opponent, so having a negative ideational target of a political opponent or country, a mix of hashtags with positive and negative evaluations. There was promotional and non-political, so non-political content using Twitter practices such as referring to followers. Reportage, so again, following that pattern of a newspaper headline plus hyperlink, which is also a legitimation strategy. And then there, again, an absence of evaluative meaning without further context. Then there was these sort of conversational tweets, so they were using colloquial expressions, but often further context needed. And then skepticism, so concerned with legitimation, a questioning tone, and expressing uncertainty or concern with refuting rumors. So just to finish off with this example, the personae that I discovered in these data sets, again, were aligning with similar concepts explored throughout my PhD. But in order to kind of automate this analysis, it really had to be quite stripped down. So I could only explore that first part of the subsystem of appraisal. It's much harder to go into further delicacies. And I also have another example to explore that relates to this as well. So I took part in the Diplomat NLP challenge. So the description from the website states, this NLP challenge asks participants to develop systems able to detect and characterize propagandistic techniques in tweets written by diplomats from USA, Europe, Russia, and China in English and Spanish. Basically, an NLP challenge, so natural language processing challenge, involves a particular task being given and a data set being given. And basically, it's usually a team of computer scientists work on solving this basically analysis challenge. And it's a competition, and the winning team is the team that can obviously like solve what the task is in the description. So solve the classification task. But speed is also important as well. So developing a system that can quickly solve the task as well. So it's those two factors, developing the classification strategy and time being important as well. So I was a linguist working in this team of computer scientists for this challenge, and our solution did receive first place in this challenge. And again, I think it speaks to the power of appraisal analysis and the power of conducting a manual analysis that is then fed into the large language model. So yeah, on this slide, I've just got some examples of the sorts of tweets we were given for the challenge. So it was a mix of tweets using propagandistic techniques or tweets that didn't contain any instances of propaganda. And within this challenge, there were two main categorization tasks. So the first one was a coarse-grained categorization with 4 classes of propaganda, plus a negative class. So we had to classify tweets according to whether they're not propagandistic, whether they appeal to commonality, so techniques that exhibit patriotism or self-praise, whether they discredit the opponent, so show hostility towards a third party, whether they contain loaded language, so it kind of moves us physically, changes our behaviors, encourages us to spread the message by moving us first emotionally, or whether there's an appeal to authority, so that's appeal to false authority and bad wagoning, so attempting to persuade the target audience to join in. So based on my manual analysis, which again was a very basic appraisal analysis just at that first layer, I again basically tried to link or create a kind of appraisal formula that linked to these categories. So the kind of non-propagandistic tweets I discovered from my manual analysis contain no evaluation or no evaluation towards a political ideational target. The tweets that appeal to commonality had a positive evaluation of a political value. The tweets that were discrediting the opponent had a negative judgment towards an individual. Tweets containing loaded language featured graduation, so the emphasis of an attitude. And tweets that appeal to authority, ethos, and ethical judgment had positive judgment towards a country. So again, based on these key patterns I discovered from the appraisal analysis, I then turned that into a prompt for the AI model. So often with effective prompts for generative AI models, you start with some sort of role playing. So you state that the system needs to be conducting a linguistic analysis, and then in bold, that's kind of the key instructions. So that's identify the tweets that do not explicitly evaluate any politicians or political phenomenon. And then you can give an instruction as well in terms of how you want the prompt answer to be formatted. So I've just said, identify your reasoning for each tweet and present in a table. And it's important as well to know that these generative AI models don't have a sophisticated understanding of systemic functional linguistic theory. So in terms of developing the prompt, I made sure to, I guess, very much like strip down the kind of theory element, or particularly in the like first stages of conducting the prompts. So whilst, like I said, that part of the challenge was successful, we did very well in that challenge. We actually didn't do well in the second task, which was a fine-grained categorization with 15 subclasses. So again, this was supposed to be a much more detailed categorization task. And it was difficult because, again, it was a fine-grained categorization task and the contextual nuances were much more difficult. So again, this leads to these issues with automated appraisal analysis. Automation is possible at that first layer of affect, judgment, and appreciation, but then further subsystems are much more difficult to automate. So, for example, within judgment, veracity, propriety, tenacity. So I would say overall, these more fine-grained categorizations are difficult to automate. So there's still a lot of need for manual analysis. So I just wanted to end this presentation with some thoughts that were addressed in the conclusion section of my PhD thesis. So that was, could my manual analysis have just been automated? Because when I was finishing off my PhD thesis, ChatGPT was rapidly gaining in popularity. So again, with the recent popularity of language generation models like ChatGPT, it's now possible for anyone to give ChatGPT a series of YouTube comments and ask it to categorize these comments according to linguistically enacted identities. But I would say ChatGPT's current limitations are in its lack of contextual information and unreliability in deciphering truthful versus false information, as it relies on the patterns it has learned from the data it was trained on and the specific prompts given. So ChatGPT has not been trained in applied linguistic methods like SFL, and so even if it does generate a list of linguistically enacted identities, it's based on common sense terms rather than a systematic approach to understanding the particular language features of the social media data. Additionally, ChatGPT is not able to generate network structures representing the connections between particular personas in their social bonds, according to SFL theory, without further contextual information and knowledge of social bonding. However, ChatGPT in its current form does offer the ability to help with sampling strategies. So, for example, quickly categorizing YouTube comments into shared themes and language structures. So that's comments with hateful language. Then providing applied linguists with the ability to conduct a manual analysis on comments representative of a larger data set. So these were some thoughts that I addressed in the conclusion section of my PhD thesis, which I thought would be interesting to reflect on. But of course, this is an rapidly changing space. So, what I say as well could soon be quickly outdated. But I thought it would be interesting to reflect on this current situation that we're in as it is unfolding. So just to summarize, study of evaluative language has many potential applications across different domains. And at the moment with my current research, I'm thinking about how I can adopt the approach of using combined generative AI to scale up my analysis, systemic functional linguistic theory to encompass the range of evaluative strategies, and corpus linguistic tools to ensure the data is contained and ethically compliant. So I believe these combined approaches can help in balancing out the benefits and challenges across each methodology. So thank you very much for listening, and please feel free to email me if you have any questions. Thank you.